everyone. How are you doing today? I am doing well. We are back again already for a Saturday Stitch with me. As you can see, I'm working on my Phoenix Rising. This is a pattern of mine in my Etsy store. You can find the link below. This is the first time I've ever stitched this, so this will turn into the model stitch, as I have talked about in my update videos. So, and it's actually has been a really enjoyable stitch for me. First, I'm going to let you know that the light today is going to probably be coming in and out. It currently is a setting sun on Thursday night, so we got a whole lot of brightness over here. So, but that will soon turn to a little bit of dusk as the sun begins to set. But I'm going to take advantage of as much natural light as I have while I can. So I am stitching this on a 30 count petroleum by the Primitive Hair, and I found this fabric again on her Etsy store. I believe it was a special dye, so I don't believe it's always available, but it's very similar to chalkboard or any other grayish black hand dyed linen or even weave. 1 2 1. So we have 1 2 1 2 2 1 2. So this is using all the DMCs that I prescribed in the pattern. And while this has some very drastic, crazy color choices, once they're all together, it's really a nice subtle variation of colors, especially on the darker fabric. So it's a nice color change, a nice color palette. And as I'm talking, as I had mentioned in my previous update from Wednesday, I am going to be using the regular backstitch is DMC Black 310 and a burgundy. I forget what the number is offhand. But I'm going to be substituting a accentuate filament, metallic filament thread. And whatever I use, I will be putting that onto the pattern so that if you want to sub that out, if you do purchase the pattern, you're more than welcome to, or you can stick with the DMC, or you can find your own metallic thread. You know, be creative. That is the theme that's going to be in all of my patterns going forward, is, you know, to be creative and to do what makes you happy. So we have 1 2 1 2 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 2 1 2. As you can see, this is how I count. So now we're at 1 2 2 3. Okay, so we want to do 1 2 2 3. So, and that's what I wanted to talk about today in today's video, is my process for designing, and the amount of work that goes into designing. Even though, you know, you sit there and you stitch it, and while it might not seem like a lot of work whenever you're stitching it, designing can be a lot of work. And I'm not saying that to complain, and I'm not saying that to moan and groan. I'm just saying, oh, I did that, and look at that. I already messed up. Let me go ahead and pull that out. So I did mess up, right? Yeah, it's 1 2 2 3. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my process of designing And keep in mind, I'm a fairly new designer, so how I do it, I'm sure, is very different than the professional designers out there. So just keep in mind, this is my process. So when I get an idea in my head, I either take it from a picture, or I have a drawing, or I have a thought in my head. And then I sit down at my computer and I either take that sketch or that picture or my brain cloud, my thought bubble, and I open up my software and I just start to plot it out on the design software. I use WinStitch. And sometimes I sit until the entire piece is designed. If it's a smaller design, which could be up to anywhere from 3 to 5 hours. Sometimes I sit and I stitch for I design for a couple hours. I walk away and I come back a day or two later. So, you know, just the beginning design elements is time consuming. And that's before I even, that's just me putting blocks of color onto the screen. I'm not thinking about color. I'm not thinking about backstitching or detail. That is just blocking out shapes. And then after all of that, then I go back in and I start to decide my color palette. I start to look at the details, the finishing touches. So if I want to add in backstitching, if I want to add in, take out full crosses and put in quarter stitches, 3/4 stitches, because I do like those elements because I like the more detailed, defined look. This phoenix around the head does utilize 1/4 and 3/4 stitches to give that very crisp shape of the nose, the beak, the head, the eye. So 2, 3, 2, and then 3, 3, 3, 3, 5. So just that is, you know, hours and hours of sitting at the computer. That's hours that's taken away from my own personal stitching. But again, I'm not complaining. This is what I enjoy doing. And sometimes this is to help keep my thrill of stitching because I might not have the urge to stitch that day. So instead of stitching, I'll sit down and look at cross stitch or look at my patterns, my designs, and I will design for a few hours instead of stitch. So I'm still working on my hobby, just doing it in a different fashion. And now I don't have scissors. Uno momento. Okay. So once, just so you all know, I'm getting a new piece of DMC off of the bobbin. So once I get all the details hashed out on the screen, then I begin to decide, and I might have an idea of linen or types of fabric that I want to use. By that point, I probably have the color palette pretty well hashed out. So I will go and begin to figure out how I'm going to stitch it up, if I am going to stitch it up. If we're talking about my new pattern, my old fashioned, what did I just do? I almost put there we go. My old fashioned windmill, then I pretty much had an idea that I was going to use Havana. I pretty much had an idea for my second model stitch, because I wanted to do two, because I am a strong advocate for being creative, and I wanted to show that you don't have to go with the prescribed orders of the DMC or of the pattern, and you can make it your own. So I had a pretty good idea that I was going to use the Nina's hand-dyed silk on one of them. I didn't know what the fabric was going to be for that one. I knew it wasn't going to be with the Havana. 5. So this is what happens. And a lot of this can be happening while I'm stitching other things. But this is the type of thought process that how I'm, much like how you may be working out your details for Stitch Mania or your stitch rotation or any kind of plans that you may build. This is what goes through my mind as designing. And then I begin to stitch. And I stitch and I stitch and I stitch. And we all know that takes time. And I sit there and I'm like oohing and ahhing, and I'm like, and not in a good way of oohing and ahhing. I'm like, ooh, is this right? Does this look right? Is this the right colors? And then, you reach out to your friends and ask them questions and say, hey, does this look right? Can you stitch this up? Can you, test model this? How does this look? Do these colors work well together? And it's a lot of work. And so, and I bring this up because I've had a lot of recent comments, especially on my video regarding the pattern copyright demystified, and the question on how can some pattern designers justify charging as much as they do for the patterns that they're providing. Now keep in mind, the patterns that I provide have been fairly small, except for this Phoenix. The Phoenix is the largest one that I have put out. 4, 1, 2, 3. So for the old-fashioned windmill, the size of that is, I believe, 40 wide by 75 high, and I could be wrong. It could be 50 wide. I'm not 100% sure. Don't take my word for it. Look it up online. But for the amount of hours that I put into that small pattern, I could have charged a lot more than that and justified it. But as a part-time designer, I wouldn't even call myself a part-time designer. I am a freelance designer doing it for fun and to learn about the craft. I'm really just doing it to recoup some of the costs to help me to be able to continue doing it, because it is something that takes a lot of time. But for some people, not me, it's their full-time job. So they have to justify the hours that they're putting into it. They have to justify the products that they're using, the cost of the products that they're using. And when they only put out 5 or 10 designs a year, and they have to recoup those costs, that's why. And so to answer those questions, they do it because it's their job. And just like how a book, if you want to go buy a hardback or paperback book at Barnes & Noble or whatever your bookseller is, Amazon, they're not cheap. And it's because people put a lot of work into those books. And cross stitch is no different. And just like how you enjoy reading, if you enjoy reading, or whatever hobby that is that you do, that you put money out, cross stitch should be no different. So yeah, some of those patterns, especially some of the remade samplers, are very expensive patterns. And it's because, my guess, don't take my word for it, my guess is that it took them a very long time of sitting and analyzing those originals to determine what those designs were to put it down on paper. It's not an easy task. It's like transcribing a book from Spanish to English or English to French. It takes time. Obviously now we have Google and all these other fancy devices, computers that can do it in minutes. But we don't have that for cross stitch yet. And so that's why it can be an expensive hobby. So maybe this was a bit of a soapbox, but I feel like I think it needed to be said that, people put a lot of time and effort into these designs. It obviously shows because the quality of the designs that are coming out is superb. They're not necessarily designs that I would stitch, but that doesn't matter because they're popular designs, and that's all that matters. And people are getting enjoyment out of it. And whether you buy my designs or not does not matter. I'm not saying this to justify my means. I'm saying this to educate that it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to put into cross-stitch patterns. I will say it's no easy task trying to put a design that you have in your head onto a screen in all little squares. Our brains are so accustomed to working in even if you're not very good at art, which I'm not. I was never superb in art. I think that's why I enjoyed cross stitch so much, because all you have to do is follow the pattern. But even if you're not good in art, the human mind is still trained to process natural shapes. And natural shapes have more than just square. But in cross stitch, all we have is the ability, I mean, it's not all we have, but the basic premise of cross stitch is squares. So of course we have other embroidery techniques. We have other techniques to accentuate the squares, to improve on it. But we have squares. So, you know, it takes a lot of practice, and I'm still honing that skill. I am far from adept at my skill of design. And that's fine. I'm happy with that. Let me see here. I gotta adjust this a little bit. So, anyways, that's my little discussion on design. Again, if you have purchased my patterns, and I thank you all who have, I would love to follow your progress on stitching those patterns. And if you're on Instagram, please, what am I doing here? Okay. Please use the hashtag GingerGeraldDesigns so that I can follow your progress and enjoy watching you be creative in your designs. And if you use the prescribed pattern ingredients, wonderful. If you use your own floss and fabric, excellent. I'm excited about that. And that is going to be my new end of video response or send off, is don't forget, be creative, because I think that's one thing that in our, what am I doing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3, 4, 5. I think that's one thing. We get so wrapped up in following the pattern that we lose track in the creative part of our hobby. And there's nothing wrong. Please don't get me wrong. Don't send hate comments because I say, you know, that you think you misinterpret what I'm saying, because I'm not saying that following the pattern word for word is wrong. It's not. There's lots of people that do it, and it's great. Wonderful. Nothing wrong with that. All I'm saying is that, you know, maybe there's a pattern out there that you would like, but you don't like the way it looks, but you don't ever change the pattern. You know what? You can still stitch that pattern. Just change it. 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 7, 8, 9, 10. So, my words of advice to you, and it's not even advice, it's just kind thoughts of consideration. If there are patterns out there that you think are really nice stitched up, but they're just not your style, because let me tell you, Michelle Bendy, Stitchy, can tell you there are a lot of patterns out there that I have said they are not my style. But guess what? I have considered changing them to make them my style. because there's a lot of really nice patterns out there that I would love to stitch, but I have to make them my own so that they look my style, or looks like a style that I know somebody would enjoy, that would appreciate a stitched piece from me. So I'm going to put a few more stitches into my piece. Maybe finish out this strand of strand of DMC, because I'm starting to lose light. I'm going to let you enjoy my new music that I have on here while I finish stitching. I hope you are enjoying your stitching, and don't forget, be creative.